Welcome,
We'll see the
everybody.
chat room.
Welcome, everybody. Please put in the chat where you're joining us from today. Remember to click to send to all panelists and attendees. We'd love to hear where you're coming from today. A lot of us are in Los Angeles. Our guests are from New York.
Mexico.
Technically, New Jersey.
New Jersey is not New York, and so you can play that technicality.
Pennsylvania, South Africa, Arizona, Argentina, Canada,
Trinidad,
Colombia, New York, Texas, St. Lucia,
Puerto Rico,
Indonesia, Bolivia, Miami, Chicago,
All over the world.
Germany, India, Switzerland.
Whoa.
Woodstock, hey.
France, wow.
Hungary.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're going to wait a moment to let all the attendees settle into the room. Let us know where you're coming from today.
Austria.
We're all very excited to be here again for
Saudi Arabia.
The third installation of SteadiSchool and Learn Filmmaking presents a live Q&A.
The Valley. Got to represent the Valley.
Welcome, everybody. Wow.
Casa Hassan. Woo.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us, you guys.
Oh, that was
Namaste.
Merlin.
Oh, they're hoping you're feeling better, Jeff. That's cool.
Awesome. I am. Thank you.
This is exciting. Those numbers are shooting up. Atlanta, Russia.
Yeah, I mean, that little post I did on my health kind of blew up, but I've heard from people all over the world. It's been amazing.
Beautiful.
Thank you for sharing it. You know, we had to see what it was, and you know, it took someone that knew how to document things to document it.
Right.
For us to see.
You know, I didn't do the best work I ever did, but it wasn't easy.
With one eye open and could barely lift your hand, you were able to hold that camera in a good frame.
It takes a certain kind of courage to do that too. It's more than the documentation; it's the heart.
Well, thank you for saying that. It was, you know, there's about a 4-day gap where I couldn't shoot, so my son edited that piece. But there was definitely, and he motivated me. He's like, shoot some more, Dad. We're going to have something here. You got to just shoot. So it was a little tough.
Well, thank you all for joining us. We're going to start doing some introductions at this point in time. Danielle, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle. I am from Camarillo, California, which is about an hour north of LA. I'm a second AC right now, and I've been taking some lessons from Jess and Matt at SteadiSchool. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Danielle. Taylor, I know you've been here before, but why don't you introduce yourself again?
Hello, everyone. I'm Taylor Hill. I'm an LA-based camera assistant. I also am training under Jess Lopez as well as Matt at SteadiSchool with the aspiration of becoming a Steadicam operator and camera operator, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us again. My name is Matthew Borick. I'm a local 600 camera technician based in Los Angeles and a SteadiSchool instructor. Very excited to be here hosting the webinar again. Jessica, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Lopez, Los Angeles, Atlanta-based camera operator and Steadicam operator. Also an instructor of SteadiSchool, and we are here trying to provide a very nice program for you. Thank you, Matt.
Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Christian Naid. I am an LA-based actress, but I volunteer for the Learn Filmmaking channel and the SteadiSchool. So welcome and thank you.
Thanks for all your help. Gabriel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Learn Filmmaking?
Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Gabriel Alexis. I'm a producer and the founder of Learn Filmmaking. A little bit about Learn Filmmaking. It's a community of filmmakers supporting filmmakers with resources and showcasing filmmakers' work on our platform on social media. And also we try to connect filmmakers with industry professionals.
Excellent. Thank you for being here and for supporting the SteadiSchool community. A little bit about SteadiSchool. Jessica approached me about starting a mentorship program where we taught new Steadicam operators and assistants how to work hand in hand with one another, because communication in the department is very important. Jessica, why don't you tell us about the Oneer and how that inspired SteadiSchool?
Telling a story in a single take is basically a Oneer, and you can do it with multiple tools. Steadicam happens to be the #1 tool, I think, where you can move based on thought. So you can help tell a story in a matter of minutes, and you can go from one room to the next, upstairs, around corners, but you can tell in a single shot the location, the time and place of the setting, who the people are, the main characters, the purpose, the conflict. There's so many things that can be told in a single take, and you learn a lot throughout that process.
That's great. Thank you, Jess. And finally, I'd like to introduce our guests, Bobby Mancuso and Jeff Muhlstock, SOC. Bobby, if you'd do us the honor of telling us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Bobby Mancuso. I'm a first AC from New York. Been in the union for a long time, so been doing quite a bit of work. Lucky enough to work with people like Jeff, and happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And Jeff, if you could also do a brief introduction of yourself.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Muhlstock. I'm thrilled to be a part of this. These guys here are doing amazing webinars, and happy to be invited. I'm just a camera guy who is thrilled to actually, be working, doing what he loves to do for a long time. And I've always said it beats working for a living, because it's kind of a hobby that, I made a living up until now.
Again, thank you both.
I'm thrilled to be here. Sorry about that. Thank you.
No, please. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you both for being here. We're going to start out by showing you a brief clip that highlights Jeff's career. Hold on one second while I share my screen with you.
Smash. A little piece from the live TV world. It was a live Oneer, Jess.
I like it. It's with Sting.
This was a wild one, Bobby. I'm sure you remember the evening quite well.
Oh yeah.
Here we go, Descender rig.
Can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. Excellent.
Great
That's
stuff.
fun to watch.
So, Jessica, if you would be so kind to start us off with the questions for our guests.
Yes, I'm going to start with the number one question. How did you get your start in operating? And did you spend any time as an assistant before? And at the end of that, if you could tell us your jump
Sure.
from broadcast to
Yeah,
narrative.
it's
3 parts.
and it all kind of ties in.
Jeff.
I didn't have the traditional start that a lot of guys have, where you come through either a rental house, you become a camera PA or first, second assistant, and kind of work your way up. I really lucked out and went to the School of Visual Arts. And as one of my thesis projects, I shot a PSA that got me a very small little blurb in a local paper. Fast forward, a producer spotted it and kind of called me and said, "I'm doing documentaries. I'd like to hire you." And that was kind of my first real gig as a cinematographer shooting docs. And that guy's name is Bob Chase. And anyway, so I did that while in school, and then I was able to actually get the equipment from school, and I got the editing tables. Back then we were shooting film. So we cut on film as well. I got paid as the editor. So we were movie bed, I believe it was Moviola flatbed tables that I was also getting from the school. So it was a good deal for this producer, and it was a great deal for me. I was getting firsthand experience shooting, getting paid a little bit. I mean, it wasn't a lot, but and getting college credit. So fast forward beyond that, I graduated school and jumped into a studio that was looking for a camera operator for a small TV show, a cable show for Madison Square Garden Network. And just by chance, that same studio was the studio where MTV was evolving at the time. So, you know, one thing leads to another in this business, and I got hired to shoot for MTV. And, you know, just as a day player camera operator. And it was kind of at the infancy in those days, just all studio work. This was before the real world, kind of before it blew up into all this other stuff. But about, you know, a couple of years into that work, I decided to take up Steadicam, and I was able to introduce them to Steadicam, saying I'm a beginner, but try this out. And it just kind of ramped up very quickly for me, and turned into just a big chunk of my career doing broadcast work. At the same time, kind of had a parallel career of doing narrative work, where the Steadicam kind of opened up that door. So, and then back to the School of Visual Arts, everything kind of goes full circle. My dear friend William Rexer, who's now a very successful DP here in New York, worked with me on a very small independent film with James Callanan, another great camera operator over here, and we shot a couple of indies in film. So then I started building a reel, and in that film, there's a couple of very long oneers. We did a 12-minute, it's basically a full mag on Super 16. It's about 11 and a half minutes long. We did that. This is back in 1992. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to answer. You know, it's a 3-part question. I think I'm sort of getting there, right, Jeff? Help me out. But essentially, it wasn't one break. You know, it was several little things that kind of led up to where I am now. But I'll say that Steadicam definitively had a big impact on how I got into narrative. I just suddenly, kind of out of the blue, got calls to come and day play, and this was in a time when Steadicam was, you know, more of a specialized tool. It wasn't this current combo A operator / Steadicam. Back then, it was, you know, there was also very few people that were doing it in New York. I mean, maybe a dozen operators in total. I mean, I think when I took Steadicam in 1990, I remember the count being 400 worldwide operators doing Steadicam. So it was obviously easier to get into that because there was less guys in the game. So I was, I just got a couple kind of neat little movie jobs. And I kind of leaned more toward the broadcast world at that time. Interestingly enough, I was really enjoying doing the live work, music, MTV Unplugged, VH1 then spawned, and they had storytellers. I did their award shows, and then so that blew up, and it was really, I kind of cornered a small market for live TV in this area. And then I was traveling back and forth to LA as well, and doing some award shows, and so that was a big chunk of my career. I was only a Steadicam operator, and then as things evolved, I started leaning away from the broadcast world, and it was around the same time my wife was having babies, and all of a sudden I started doing narrative, television, film. It just kind of happened. It just kind of evolved. Am I missing a part to the question, or is that kind of get us there?
You're muted, Jessica.
See, that happens. Yes, you were getting to the third part of the question, which was going from broadcast to narrative. Making that.
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of happened organically, as I'm saying, but a big part of what took me out of broadcast was I felt like, and we spoke a little bit about this in the past, but I always felt the need for a focus puller, which is big. It would be a great transition for Mr. Bobby. And
thank you for that.
one of my dearest friends in the world, Kevin Murphy, was my focus puller for television. And when I say television, live video. And I always insisted on having him with me. I needed my guy. I needed to have the guy that knew my equipment, the guy that could set it up when I was in a camera meeting, and basically the guy that I had a shorthand communication with without having to speak. Super important with the operator focus puller. So what began to happen in that world is fellows came up, guys and gals came up, and they were not using focus pullers in that part of the industry. And I resisted it. I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not, if the shot doesn't require a focus puller, then I don't know if the shot is interesting enough, quite frankly. And I started feeling like I was just the human dolly, back and forth in front of a stage, the occasional 360. So it just, the transition just happened for me. I lost a little interest in that part of it. The economy of that business changed, where really it was not something that I felt like fighting for. So I just kind of left that world. And also the physicality of doing concerts, as I was getting, I did that for easily 15 years. And I'm talking about like Bruce Springsteen concerts where I wore the rig for almost 4 hours, hanging it up in between songs just to catch my breath, basically. So all these things combined just kind of led me away from that part of it. And I do miss it. I miss the camaraderie of the folks in that. There's so many great people that I've got to work with. So that part of it I greatly miss. But I've got a new family. I've got this new film family, and it's it's a whole different world. And then of course, the way things happen in the industry, the combo operator really evolved, during this time period. There never used to be an A camera / Steadicam operator. I mean, that's a combo title that I think kind of came about because of the economics.
Right. When I was doing movies, I don't mean to interrupt, but
yeah, please help me.
Steadicam was brought in for specific shots. They'd come in on a certain day. They'd come in for that day, do that shot, and that would be it, really. And then, yeah.
Make all that money. We called that the glory years, Bobby. And it was very appealing. You come in, you're getting a much higher than usual rate. I mean, I was making more way back when than I am now. Once it turned into a combo rate, that kind of changed the whole dynamic of it. However, I'll say this: I prefer this system now, in the sense that I have a big part of the decision making as to when Steadicam gets used and when it doesn't. And B, I find there's actually less time in the rig overall. So it's less beating up on your body when you've got this combination platter. You've got all these other tools available to you. And so, but yeah, it was, my transition happened around that time, which Bobby's talking about, where we would just come in as a day player, do a shot. I mean, I think that the biggest movie that kind of jumped me to the next stratosphere at the time was Across the Universe. Eric Swanick brought me in for that. Another great focus
movie.
puller.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was like, and I just day played coming in and out for over about a 4-month period. But it was just amazing, just an amazing experience. And I was able to like combine my music experience with film. And so that was a big turning point, probably. That film is really what kind of pushed me over the edge. So, you know, this is really what I want to do. I want to make movies. And now I just look for TV that feel like movies.
That's nice.
Robot.
Yeah, that's hard to find. Yeah.
Incredibly hard to find. And I mean, you know, and cut me off if I'm going too long with you guys, but the Mr. Robot thing, because I know we're going to get into that. It's so rare to find a TV show, a scripted television show that has one director, one cinematographer, and one vision. And it's really like working on a movie for, you know, it was 6-7 months on that project.
Right.
So that is the ideal. That, for me, that is the choice gig, because, you know, this cookie cutter bakery thing that TV gets into, where they're going to prep one director, another director comes in, the DP shift while the other one's, you know, he's scouting and he's shooting, and it's going to be done in 8 days no matter what the script says. You know, that formula, although it's worked for many years for network television, really is kind of dated, and in my view doesn't really enable you to do good work. And in the end, it's all about the work for me. Perfect transition.
So tell us about your time together on season 4 of Mr. Robot.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby and I went through this. Every day was an adventure. Look how close the lens. This is beyond minimum focus.
Yeah. Very challenging.
Right, Bob? This shot looks like you went beyond.
I think so.
the far side of the eye.
It was.
Yeah, I mean, amazing
it was a very
experience.
challenging job, but it was very satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby and I, it was so hard. I felt so bad for Bobby at times, because Sam Esmail, who's the most brilliant director I've had the chance to work with, you know, is so demanding in terms of what he wants, and he'll push. And I wrote about this in the SOC article that came out recently. He will push it until it's impossible. And Bobby defeated the impossible on a daily basis. We have to really work together. I mean, I always would eke it back on for you a little bit whenever I could. When Sam was walking from you to the monitor, I'd have Joe Belcher, our grip, you know, to back it up to give Bobby another inch. Of course, this was an 8K show where we did a 6K frame line inside of that, so there was room for stabilization and reframing them. But the challenge of this show for me was, I mean, look at the headroom. I mean, every shot, very unorthodox composition that, you know, when you first come into it, you know, it's a little bit of a head scratcher for me, but I really started to love it. I mean, to the point where I've been on shows since where I get yelled at.
The first week, Jeff was like, oh boy, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. I don't know if I'm going to make it. And it took 1 week and you go right into it.
Right? And these aerial shots that kind of evolved, I think they did more in this season. It just kind of happened, you know, we had the cranes every day. We had more toys on this job than any other job I've ever been on. It's a rare handheld shot. But anyway, we found these high shots that just started becoming the master. And couldn't do one on the subway. But Sam really discovered that these high shots, and we would spend hours and hours doing these high and wide shots that you, on a regular TV show, you would have, done 1, 2, and moved on. We would go take after take. I'll talk about this Descender rig too, but another high shot. Scott Tinsley shot that one.
I like this effect of the shaky, the vibration.
Yeah, we tried doing that practically, and then our effects supervisor, Chad started to enhance on all that stuff. But I tried to jiggle the wheels as much as I could, but a little tough. We turn off the stabilizers on the lever head. But again, headroom, and the most difficult part as an operator for this kind of composition, because everything was short-sided also. So we'd have this high headroom, and usually that's not a great example of the short side, but high headroom and short-sided frame. For those of you who don't know what short-sided frame would be, if I'm having a conversation with someone over here, this is the conventional lead room, whereas Sam Esmail would want something like this. So the challenging part of that is that if the actor were to move, you don't have the normal lead space that you have. So you have to really kind of micro operate to make that work. So it was very challenging for me. But boy, I love it now.
Yeah, the other thing he hated was panning. Remember?
Of course.
He wanted to see the actor play the frame. He hated, why are you panning the camera? Why are you panning the camera?
Yeah, that was a strange one. He didn't want panning, but he wanted the camera to move. So,
right.
I mean, that became a dynamic move where either a dolly or a crane would have to move laterally. But if he saw the pan, he'd say, "I'm throwing up," is basically what he would say. He would say, "I'm throwing up now because you're panning." Yeah, let me just, here's Mr. Robot frame here, right here. something like that.
That's it.
I've been reprimanded. I mean, the jobs that I've been on since, I just default to this frame because I like it now. And I literally, the DP will be like, "You get that Mr. Robot shit out of here." I don't know. Did pretty well. What can I say? But yeah, it's no panning thing was weird, huh, Bob?
Yeah.
That was one of the strange ones. It's just and incredibly challenging. I mean, think about it. You don't pan the camera, but you need to get an actor from that doorway to this doorway.
Yeah, and your natural instinct is to pan the camera.
So I find myself just a little bit of pan. Please don't see it. Don't yell at me.
Bobby, why don't you take a moment to let us know a little bit about your background, how you came to be at this point in your career. Did you start out as a second assistant? Did you work at a rental house? What was your career path like?
Yeah, I started out at General Camera, which at that time was Panavision. And I worked there for like 7 years. And then I got in the union. And when I got in the union, there was a trainee program. So when you got in, you'd do 1 or 2 jobs as a trainee. And my first job was this movie, Bright Lights, Big City, that Gordon Willis shot. So I was a trainee on that. And then after that, I did a movie called Big as a trainee. I started that. And like 3 or 4 weeks into the movie, the first AC left. So Barry Sonnenfeld was the DP. He moved up Jay Levy, who was the A second. And Jay moved me up to second. So that was... After that, I was a second, no more trainee. After that, I got a call from Florian Ballhaus. He asked me to be his second on a movie called Working Girl. And I had a nice run with Florian and Michael. I did like 7 movies with them, and that was a special time in my career, I got to say, because they treated me like family. They were unbelievable. After that, you know, I worked with various DPs. I got to work with DPs from LA. I was able to get into 659 at the time, because there were 3 locals at that time, New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. So then I got a call from Don Thorne Jr. He asked me to be his second on this, the second Ace Ventura movie. So I did that. I said, I kind of wanted to move up at that time. So I said, well, Don, how about, you know, can I be the B first? And he said, no, we already hired somebody. They hired Peter Kuttner. He was from Chicago, great assistant out of Chicago, great guy. And, but he said, but I'm going to start doing Steadicam, and I'm going to do Steadicam on the show. So how about you want to pull focus when I do Steadicam? So I was like, yeah, that's great, you know. So I did that job with them, and everything went great. And a couple of months later, I get a call from his father, who was the DP, Don Sr., and he says, I'm coming to New York to do a movie. Donnie's going to come in. He's going to be the first assistant, and I want you to be the second. And I was like, oh, Don, you know, I really don't want to work as a second anymore. I'm really trying to move up. And he said, look, do this movie with me, and I promise I'll make it up to you. So I was like, okay, I'll do it, you know. So about a week later, he calls me up and he says, I got some bad news. The union won't let Donnie in to do the movie. And I'm like, oh shit, I guess I'm out of a job now. So he says, so I want you to do it. And I was like, what? He says, yeah, he says, I know you in your heart, you know, you're just doing it as a favor to me. And I told you I'd make it up to you. So you're going to be the A camera first. And that was it. You know, that was my big break. That was on First Wives Club. And that was my first big, you know, A camera show. And after that, it was just no looking back, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. We're going to get into some more of the highlights of your career in a moment. But at this point, I want to ask Chris, have you plucked a question from the audience for us?
Yes, so I have a question, and I'm sorry if I don't say your name correctly, Manas Kohar. And this is a question for both. Being a camera operator or a camera assistant, do you guys ever think of expanding to a cinematographer DP career?
Bobby, you first.
Well, not really. I never had the ambition to be a DP. My ambition was to be an operator, but because of certain logistics, when I was ready to move up, I had 2 kids in college, so I really couldn't afford to not work, you know, so I kind of put it on the back burner. But my goal was to be an operator. I thought that was, for me, the most interesting job on the set.
I think it sort of is. I mean, and to help Bobby with this answer, because it applies to both of us. I mean, when you're that good at what you do, and Bobby is certainly one of the best at his craft, it's very difficult to leave that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to take, you know, 10 steps back when you're that far ahead of the class. When you're at the top of your game, it's you know, then all of a sudden to become an operator where you're a newbie at operating, but by no means are you, but you get caught in this kind of conundrum of how to move up, and time goes, and you need to make the money, and we've been in the same boat. I've got put 2 kids through college myself, so I mean, for me, I love operating. It's all I ever wanted to do. I do enjoy shooting as a DP. Certainly the opportunity has come up many times, and I've given it some deep thought, and I sort of feel like it's something that maybe I'll do when I can't walk.
Don't say
I
that.
don't know, God forbid, right? No, it's interesting because it's. I've also felt that to take on the cinematography position, you're adding 10 times the level of stress, and it's probably a cut and pay, quite frankly, in the beginning, on many shows and many levels. So for me, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I really love being in front of the actor. I've got the front row seat, man. There's nothing better than sitting in the front row seat. I mean, for heaven's sake, I had Rami Malek performing to me every day for 6 months. Academy Award winning. The day I met him was the day after he got the Academy Award. And I mean, for heaven's sake, what's better than that? It's a dream. But I do have ambition to direct. I will say that for me, I would like to make that transition at some point, because the money equals the stress level a little closer.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Jeff. Gabe.
I hope that answered it.
Oh, no, that was fantastic. Thank you all for being here again. Please put your questions in the Q&A. We will try to get to as many as possible, but we will not get to each and every one of them. We appreciate your patience. Gabe, do you have one lined up for us?
I'll start shortening my
Yes, I
answer.
do.
No, not at all, Jeff.
So this is a similar question from Rose V. She asks, how much power does a cam operator have over making decision about shots versus a cinematographer?
That's a very good question, and there's not one answer to that, because every cinematographer and every dynamic to every set is different. I mean, there are people that I work with more frequently that put more trust in me. You know, since we've talked about Mr. Robot, it's a good example. Todd Campbell, who is a brilliant cinematographer, you know, and lit the crap out of that show. I mean, really did a spectacular job. But as far as the framing goes, that was Sam Esmail, the director. So on that show, it was, you know, a very specific framing game that was played between me and the director. And I obviously would offer things that I thought looked good, and he'd either say yes or no. And I'm never going to hold back. I'm always going to try if I see something, because, you know, as an operator, you're in a seat where you see things that a director or somebody at Video Village doesn't see. You know, because I've got the ability to look out my other eye, not just my eyepiece eye. So, you know, sometimes there's something super interesting that's happening right off the frame. So I'll always offer something. The worst thing that can happen is we have to do another take.
See, I think that separates the great operators from the mediocre operators. You know, having that input, being able to say, hey, why don't we try this, you know? So I think as an operator, that's important. Yeah, I think that's very important.
I mean, but you also have to know when it's appropriate. You have to know the room, right? I mean, like any conversation, you really have to know your room and know your boundaries. There are many places where you just don't say anything. For instance, I shot the pilot to vinyl. The brilliant Rodrigo Pierte and Martin Scorsese. That is not the room that you offer suggestions in. You just, yes, sir. What would you like? Can I do this? Can I do this better for you? I mean, so there's no one answer is the answer to that question. Every room is different.
It's great to know, though, to understand that, you know, it is a collaborative medium sometimes, and it's a, you know, command-based position others.
Sometimes you're just operator, and that's it, and you have to understand that.
In those moments, Jeff, you know, as a goal as an operator is to try and obviously maximize your shot. In those moments where, like a Scorsese set where you kind of button it, would you still try to maximize your shot and keep it going? You know, like the 3 seconds after they cut, you know, the stuff to really try and give them a little bit more, even though they know they want it, they know what they want.
For sure.
You can see the little extra bits.
You're right. And yes, and I did it to a fault. And I've learned from that job, because there were times where it was really, you know, it angered him. And then there were times where, oh, that's cool. Let's try this. I extended. There was one Steadicam shot that I extended a bit. I figured out, oh, I can do this and get all the way into this nameplate. I think it was the first time we came into the record office, if you had seen that pilot. And I did it during one of the rehearsals just to kind of offer it up. And I made it sort of look like it's just an accident. Oh, by the way, I could just do this without saying anything. And then it sort of turned into, you know, Marty's idea. But then here lies the challenge of that. Because I offered that, then all of a sudden we started to redo something. And then all of a sudden he wanted to get closer to the nameplate. So we ended up having to change to a zoom lens and build a zoom control. The great Zorn was my assistant for this one, Bobby. Thanks to you. You introduced me. And
Yeah.
it was, again, there's a very fine line where when to present it. And I would say that it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do at that point in time to offer that shot, because it added some time to production. So all these things have to go into that. You have to process, you have to make it into an equation. Well, if I say this, that's going to turn into this, then they're going to have to relight that, and this is going to be, so there's always a domino effect when you offer up a shot. So you have to just understand what you're getting yourself into before you go offering a shot. And I've learned over the years when to just zip it, because I do just want to go home at night. At the end of the day, I want to do really good work, but I also want to make sure we go home. So it's the collaboration. I look for the job where I can collaborate with a DP that enjoys that process. Those are the jobs I seek.
And
great.
that's something you don't learn overnight. That takes time, and sadly you will have those bumps in the road, and you will learn
I'm
from
still
it.
learning.
And, yeah.
I mean, I every day I'm still learning from that. But that was a very big learning experience for me, that particular job, working at that high of a level with these two guys, you know, Academy Award winning filmmakers. I learned a lot from that job.
That's great.
Both good and bad things.
Those are the best learning environments, though, when you grow in many ways. Taylor, do you have a question prepared for Jeff?
I do. Kind of going off of Mr. Robot just a little bit, but I'm curious how you sharpen your various operating skills, whether it's Steadicam or Gearhead. How do you go about that?
Golf. I play golf. This is a very wild 360 shot that we're showing here, which was much harder than it looks, actually, because I was in another room, and usually it's nice as an operator on a remote head to see the remote head, at least to feel the space, whereas this I had to be just totally rely on the monitor and the amazing work of my dolly grip, Joe Belcher. I hope you're out there listening, because what's happening, what you don't see here, is he's on the ground. He shrunk the Pee-wee dolly as small as it could go, but he's booming up and down throughout the shot. So I had to just feel when he was doing that boom in order to adjust for tilt at those moments. So super hard, but that doesn't really answer your question. I just couldn't help responding to that shot. But to sharpen my skills, I mean, by doing. I mean, really the only way to get good at something is by practice. I will say that when I took up Steadicam in 1990, I was in a unique situation where I was basically given a rig to practice with. At the time, it was an EFP. Tony Tamborelli, who used to own Video Rentals, Inc. here in New Jersey, he bought the rig. He found out I was going to workshop, bought a rig. He said, don't you buy one, use mine, keep it in your house. And for 2 years, I practiced for 2 hours a day, every single day, until I really felt comfortable enough to go start doing some very basic video jobs. So practice, practice, practice. I literally, my apartment, my small apartment in Hackensack, New Jersey, drew tape lines. I had all the stuff that you learn in SteadiSchool. crosshair marks on the wall. I had a weight plate built, and at the time it was a little high 8 camera, video camera that I used to just weigh down my rig. And I'd zoom in all the way to the tightest possible lens, and I'd try to line up the crosshairs while walking in a line and doing switches back and forth on one forward. And I would boxes, stepping over, you know, the usual kind of exercises that they teach you in Steadicam school. And for 2 years, every single day I practiced. You know, jumping forward, you know, I was a disaster on the wheels. It was not something I was totally uncomfortable with. I'm dyslexic as all hell, which is kind of bizarre that I'm even in this business. But I was awful. I was awful with the wheels until Smash, which gave me the opportunity to essentially be on a crane on a remote head, you know, 3 or 4 times a week. And I just kind of faked my way through it. And eventually I got, you know, I'm still faking it, but I'm doing pretty good with it now. You know, it becomes second nature, but again, it's practice. And that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
No,
practice.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what, you know, I figured you can only do to get better. You have to have more hands-on experience and try to get some people with gear or get your hands on gear in any way you can. Speaking of practice, though, out of curiosity, how long did you guys rehearse that shot beforehand? How many takes did it, you know, did you need?
Is that crazy? 360?
You're working with a grip too. You said a dolly, right?
Yeah, Joe.
Yes.
It was, gosh, I don't know. How many takes, Bobby? 13, 15?
Yeah, because it was also had to do, it was basically a oneer. So it had to do with dialogue, you know. So there were quite a few takes, you know. If one of them messed up dialogue, we'd have to start over again, because the whole thing was a timing shot where Jeff had to follow the dialogue and be on a certain person to make sure he caught their dialogue. So if there was a slip up in the dialogue, you know, we had to start over again.
Exactly. And that was a circumstance where, you know, I don't think that was intended before the day to be a 360. I think Sam kind of came up with that on the day.
Right.
I don't believe that was a planned 360. And there came a point where we were just kind of playing with it. And Sam said to me, "Jeff, is this going to work? I mean, am I killing myself? Should I just break this down and do some kind of," he didn't even like to use the word coverage, but should I just do a cut or do something else? And I felt, you know, let's give it a shot. It's crazy. And then I was also able to kind of talk through with the actors and adjust the blocking a little bit to make it work. So that was not, the final product was not the original blocking. But that's a circumstance where, as an operator, you really have to get in there and help work with the director. As long as the director is willing to allow you to make it better. And this was a circumstance where we've already been far enough into the show where the trust was there. And he let me kind of, you know, move the actors a little bit just to make the shot so it wasn't as abrupt. And again, the irony is he didn't like panning, but this was nothing but panning. Go figure. But it was crazy, and it worked for the style of that moment, and it told the story, and it you know, I hope it didn't make anybody throw up from going around and around.
No, it's great. Someone in the chat was saying you look like a musician, almost like conducting an orchestra when you're doing the wheels with it, and it's
that's fun.
A cool shot. So it's great to watch.
Yeah, it was that was a fun one. I'm very proud of that shot. That was one of the cool ones we did. The robot did, you know, as you know, as a fan of that show, they did so much of. We have in the silent episode, there's a crane shot in the police station that goes on for about 4.5 minutes, and that one took something like 26, 28 takes. That was a tough one. All these details.
Yeah, we had a great grip department. Richie Guinness and our dolly grip Belsoner was incredible. I mean, this guy would swing a 50-foot crane. We used a 50-foot crane on a set, his apartment set, and we'd be up high, following him around the apartment on a 50-foot crane. and end up in a close-up at minimum focus, and Joe would hit it every time, man. It was incredible. And
A good dolly grip will make an
Yeah.
operator look really good or really bad. And I've had both of those.
And even our crane techs were great.
Yeah, amazing.
Kevin and Mike Buck, Kevin Gilliam, Mike Buck. The great thing about that show, it felt like such a collaboration.
Yeah.
Like, the shots were hard for everybody. But after it was done, we'd all look at each other and say, holy shit, that was pretty cool, man. That really worked. That was cool.
Yeah. I'd be remiss not to mention my buddy Lance
Oh,
Mayer,
yes.
who basically we had a Libra Tech full-time, sat next to me every day for the entire run of the show. And again, it's technicians like that, like Bobby, like my grip, my Libra Tech. If you have quality technicians that you surrounded yourself with, I mean, it makes your job easier. And these guys made me look good every day. I mean, we became good friends. And that's really, when you have a bond like that, it's rare on a set that you have such kind of a perfect storm of people. This was that.
Yes, definitely.
Such wonderful insight. Thank you guys for sharing. Danielle, if you had a question for Bobby, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, Bobby, I would love to know any advice you would have for someone who's new to big budget sets. How should they behave? What's the set etiquette? And if you could talk a little bit about what Jeff mentioned earlier, if there's, excuse me, ever a time to speak up creatively.
I think, like Jeff stressed, each set is different, and you have to know your audience and kind of play your audience. There are certain people that you could go right up to and speak to. For the most part, though, as an assistant, you have to be quiet. Pay attention. And like I said, a lot of directors don't want to hear talking on the set. So there are times where you just have to be quiet and do the job. A lot of this clip is from Wolf of Wall Street, and that's Zoran Veselic, who is a great friend of mine and an incredible focus player. And I learned so much from him because I learned a lot of set etiquette from him. When to be quiet, when to keep your mouth shut, when to keep up, and certain ways to keep up. I always found, as a focus puller after a while, sometimes you have an idea where you think that it's right. But a lot of times the director has a vision and they want focus in a certain place. But one thing I always found the best way to do it, I always go to the operator first. Like if I had a question about something, I would go up to Jeff and say, yeah, what do you think? I feel like this focus here, And he would either say to me, no, that's not for this shot, because we got that in the coverage, or he would say, yeah, why don't we give it a shot? If we can run that one way, now we have a chance to do it, we'll give him a variety. And I think that's a big part of it, because I think the operator is more the voice to the director and cameraman more than the assistant. I always started with taking the operator first. I'm not afraid to yell at somebody, to yell at the operator. But a lot of times on Mr. Robot, I would say to people and say, hey, look, hear any speaking from the monitor? It works,
I caught most, Bobby. I had a little trouble hearing you most, but I caught the gist of it. It is a dialogue, and it's and it's great that Bobby and I mean, I didn't discover Bobby, but we discovered each other like kind of late in our careers. I wish I had worked with him for years and years, but it's so cool to, you do a take and Bobby, if he sees something, because again, it's about, if, we're all doing this together. It's a collaborative medium. If he sees something that I miss, he'll come to say, might be really great. Let's, should we try this? And who am I to dispute Bobby Mancuso's got an idea? For heaven's sake, let's see it. So it's yeah, it's amazing. The collaboration is what makes it
Yeah.
fun. It really is.
Like I said, I think approaching the operator first is the person to go to. You know, I've worked with other great operators, Dave Thompson, Buzz Moyer, and the same thing. I'd always go to them first. And
Who are these guys that you named? I don't recognize those.
A couple of no-name guys, right? But these were, you know, these are the relationships that you build up. And I like I said, I always find it better to go to the operator first. If you have a question, if you say, maybe I should be playing the focus deep here instead of, you know, to get a line or something, you know.
Yeah.
But the operator, I think, has a better understanding of what the shot is. And they may be framing for a particular shot, a particular line, you know. Like I said, and Jeff would say to me, no, you know what, we really got to get this line over here. So why don't we play it here? You know, I think it's better off, you know.
Yeah, you raised the subject of it's a protocol,
yes,
kind of thing, and it's the same with me. You know, do I go right to the director, or is this a question that I ask the DP, or is this a question that I should be asking the AD? I mean, you know, there's times, and again, it's about knowing the room, and that's really what you're speaking of. There's a time and place of when to ask who.
Yeah. I did a couple of movies with Scorsese too, but I would never go up to him and say, hey, Marty, what do you think? Should I play the focus here? You know?
Right.
So it depends on the director, but like Sam Esmail was very open to it on Mr. Robot, you know. I'd sometimes go up to Jeff would say, oh, let's run it by Sam. And I'd say, Sam, what do you think? And he'd say to me, what do you think? And I'd say, well, I think we should play it here. And he'd say, okay, let's do it. But so Marty wouldn't say that.
Yeah. And if he didn't like it, he would just carry on. No. That became the ongoing joke on set.
Yeah.
But we had fun, and he great sense of humor Sam had, and if we missed it, we missed it. Yeah. It wasn't. He never got angry. You know, you miss a shot, it happens. Now he would ask. He said, "Do we just go again, or do I have to fix something?" Which was his great collaboration as a director, because he knew enough to ask that. Like, you know, is this shot? Have I really pushed you to impossible? And do I need to adjust something with the actors? Or Bobby and I would look at each other and be like, no, let's try it again. Let's try it again. We got nothing else to do. Let's just keep going. 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Let's just go for a few more takes.
But Danielle, let me say one thing to you. Just remember, everybody misses shots. No one is perfect. Like Jeff said, no one is perfect. Everybody misses shots. And any first assistant who tells you they never missed a shot, they're full of shit. Everybody misses shots. So don't think, you know, like, oh shit, you know, I missed it. It happens to everybody. So
it can be about owning it, right?
Exactly.
If you own it and let them know.
Exactly right. Hey, I missed them here. You know, we have to go again. Some directors will freak out. Some will say, okay, let's go again, you know, but everybody misses shots.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. It's not about how you get knocked down, but it's about how you get back up. I mean, that's, you know, no truer advice, Bobby.
We're all professionals at getting back up.
Yeah, right.
Well, look, everybody's there trying to do their best, no matter what, you know, and, you know, booms in the shot or whatever. You missed the focus pole, misses a shot. The operator misses a stand-up or something. Everybody misses something, you know, and everybody's trying their best. So that's all you could do.
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Chris, do you have a question from the audience for us?
Yes, so I actually have, I saw a very similar question between a lot of our attendees, and this is for both. What advice can you give an aspiring camera assistant / operator? Do you recommend going to school for this? Is it better to find mentors that could personally hire you and bring you to learn from experience? Like, what is your take on that?
Uh, Jeff, you want to start that one?
I was hoping you would.
Okay. Well, I think there are all different ways to get started, and there's no right way or wrong way. If you could find somebody to mentor you, like who will give you a chance, say you're a second assistant and you're working with a DP and you've done a few jobs with them and an opportunity comes up now for you to bump up. It's always great to do it in an atmosphere where you have friends around, where you have people that will look after you. It's not a hostile environment. Like I said, if you miss something, there's somebody there who will look after you. So I think that's important. Um, like I said, a lot of people go to film schools. I came to the rental house. A lot of people go to like the PA route. There's no right way or wrong way. You just have to find the road that's right for you. There's people who've done it many ways.
That's great.
Yeah, I agree with everything Bobby's saying, and just to add to that, do what you really want to do. Also, it's because everybody wants to be a camera operator on a set. It seems like it's a very popular route. It's just maybe they just see because I'm laughing a lot. I don't know. I'm getting paid to laugh, but stick to your guns. I just think if you want to shoot, then shoot every student film you can shoot. Just do what you want to do, and stick to it. I mean, because there is the conundrum of getting into you become a career assistant, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're gonna go for it, I say go for it, and just shoot, and don't. And Bobby's always given advice, and I always respected this about what you told some of our friends that wanted to bump up from just say second to first, and you said if you're gonna do it, stick to it and don't go back. Once you make that move, follow that road. You really just have the confidence to say, this is who I am and this is what I do. I mean, and if I may, just to go back, when I started doing Steadicam, there was a point where I decided I wasn't going to be an operator. I was only going to be a Steadicam operator. And of course, this is different times, but the point is I wanted to be viewed as a specialist, and I didn't want people to say, oh, he just does this as another thing. So during that time period, I basically turned away work as just a conventional operator, and I would say, no, I'm only doing Steadicam now. And I think that really helped my career progress because people viewed me as a specialist. So, I just stuck to my guns. I mean, once I discovered that Steadicam was like this magical thing for me, that's it. That's all I want to do. So it's stick to your guns.
I have that same feeling. And as a newer person coming into the profession, like 10 years ago, and then as a female, I've had a lot of opinions, and a lot of people want to tell me what to do and how to do it and where to do it. I mean, it's so, and I can say what you said, just stick to your guns, know exactly who you are and what you want to do is really the only way you're going to get through it. Because if I listen to everybody, even if the good stuff and the bad, if I chose to listen to every single thing, I would not be here right now. So it's like picking and choosing the right moments when you do want to listen and hoping that is very good advice and using it and staying yourself and pushing forward no matter what.
For sure. And just one last super important thing. If you're an AC out there and you're looking for an opportunity to bump up as an operator, just be darn sure that you're being protected by your DP and your other operators, because you'll get thrown. You've seen this, Bobby, 100 times. You get thrown into a situation that you're really not there. You're not really up to speed yet. And if you fail in that environment, it becomes more difficult to get bumped up again. Whereas
Exactly.
if you take on something that's a little less challenging at first, and then you shine, then you get another opportunity. So it's just be very careful about what you bump up to, because if you same thing with Steadicam, Jess, and you know this. If you take a job and you're not there yet, that's it. He or she is terrible. Don't
Right.
hire them.
You don't want that starting out your career, you know.
So
That's
Gabe,
definitely something I've been through, and I know that some of the other operators have been through. They kind of got an opportunity too soon before they were ready, and they've been labeled and stamped and rumor mill and all that stuff. That is the downside about the industry, is you're given a chance. If you're not ready for it, they'll remember that over all the things you were ready for. So
it's so true. So just the takeaway from that is, just don't do it until you feel like you're ready. If you go too soon, it'll set you back.
I think that's a big
gauge.
problem with Steadicam too. I think a lot of people are buying a rig and they're saying, okay, I'm a Steadicam operator now, you know.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people fall on their faces and they get a bad reputation, you know, saying, oh, don't hire that guy back, don't hire that person back, you know, because they were terrible, you know, it's not that they were terrible, they just weren't ready, you know.
Right. Well, and in fairness, with all these new devices, there is less of a learning curve. I mean, when I came up, I'll never forget hearing from, you know, Garrett and Larry McConkey and the greats. And I think Larry said it at one point, that it's a 5-year learning curve. You know, from the time you take the workshop, it's 5 years. You're going to suck for 5 years. And if that's not what you're prepared to do, not for you. And I really took that, and I've said it to many other operators along the years. Is the learning curve 5 years anymore? Probably not, now that you have, you know, all these other self-leveling devices, and obviously all these other gimbal rigs. So, but still, you still need the experience before you go out and say I'm this when you're not.
And to take on that, I AC'd for a little bit, but you know, I come from the manufacturer side of learning how Steadicams are built, and you know, working there. That's how I got in. But I'll tell you, I'm learning twice as much, working twice as hard, trying to learn the things that I did miss. And it's not a good feeling, because you feel overloaded too, because all those skills, loading and ACing, are very important as a camera operator to turn around and be able to understand how your department works, and to be a good leader and help keep the flow and the rhythm going and keep people on track and the morale.
All part of the job.
And
the operator's job. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, don't be afraid to take the small job to get your experience. You know, even as a focus puller, if you're a second assistant and you're thinking of moving up and you're a very successful second, and somebody calls you, hey, I got this low budget movie, you know, no money, would you want to pull focus on it? Those are the jobs to take, you know, to get your experience, to learn. Don't be afraid to take those jobs. Those are the ones that you need to take. You don't want to be thrown into a big job where there's a lot more pressure. And, you know, like Jeff said, you want to be amongst friends when you make that move, from anything, from second to first to operator. So it's important. When you try to make a move, don't turn down those small jobs. You know, those are the ones to take.
Thank you, guys. This is great. Absolutely sound advice. Gabriel, do you have another one from the audience for us?
I do. So I have 3 questions for Bobby.
Okay.
So the first question is, what is your process when it comes down to long shots? Are you taking marks down or playing on the fly? Any tips to pulling long takes will be great. Thank you. This is from Daniel.
Well, you got to remember, I come from the film world. So I'm used to getting marks, you know, getting focus marks, things like that. And that's the way I've done it for 30 years, you know. So, but again, now with all the technology that's out, things have changed. You know, with video, everybody's looking at monitors now. You know, so you have to find your wheelhouse. You have to find what's comfortable with you. A lot of people like to get focus marks with a monitor, on the monitor. I kind of still like to get it through the eyepiece. Unfortunately, the eyepieces aren't as good as they were, you know, with film cameras. So sometimes it depends on the shot, on the type of shot. If there's a lot of background and, you know, it's harder to do it, sometimes I'll try to do it on the monitor, you know. But then again, you know, now with things like light rangers, things like that, it's a different ball game. You know, you could wing it more with a light ranger than you can just by eye, you know,
Yes.
unless you're some kind of wizard that I'm not, you know. So embrace the technology that's out there is what I'm trying to say. Don't be afraid to use the technology. It's there. Focus pulling has gotten, I think, so much harder since it went to HD with 8K and large format. So any technology you could use to help you, you have to embrace. You know, that's the way I feel. Like I said, as a new focus puller coming up, getting marks might not be comfortable for you by eye because you're used to looking at the monitor. I'm not used to that. Yeah, I do it, but I still prefer to watch the actors. So, you know, again, you have to find what's comfortable for you. There is not a right way or a wrong way to do it. It's just whatever works for you. As long as you get the shot in focus, it doesn't matter how you do it. If you could do it with your eyes closed, hey, you know.
Right.
Like I said, I'm more of an old school focus puller. So I like to have marks. I like to see the actors. I can't be in another room and pull focus, you know. Even if I'm on a monitor, I put my monitor right next to the camera. Jeff will tell you I crowded him all the time. I was almost right on top of him, but I like to
Couldn't
see
have it any other way.
Yeah, I like to see when the dolly moves, you know, when the actor moves. I'm just more used to that.
Do you have this is a question from Marilyn. Do you have a favorite piece of camera technology that makes your life easier as an AC?
Well, right now, I think the Light Ranger is a great tool. Great tool, yeah. And like I said, it's a learning curve. It's something you have to learn. For me, it was harder, I think, than probably a lot of young assistants who come up basically pulling focus off a monitor. You know, I wasn't used to that. And with the Light Ranger, you really have to watch the monitor. So if you're going to use it, there is a learning curve, but it's a great tool. It's a great tool. And like I said, I'll take all the help I could get. You know, any technology out there that makes our job a little easier. Otherwise, you end up gray like me.
Well, thank you for your answer. I appreciate it, Bobby.
Great. That leads into Jessica. I think that I have a photo to accompany this. Go ahead, Jess.
Well, I'm going to ask the number one question to Jeff that I'm sure a lot of social media is wondering. How did it feel operating Steadicam around the Obamas? Because that's very exciting. I'm getting goosebumps looking at the picture again.
Yeah.
And was it high pressure?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, look at that.
And what's up with the jumpsuit? Yeah.
Well,
everybody wants to know where you're trying to blend in.
Believe it or not, that's the jumpsuits they wanted us to wear. All the crew wore them. Mine was a little bit large for two reasons. I had the vest on underneath, obviously, and I also had a coat. I don't know if anyone remembers, but that day was, I want to say it was like 18 degrees, and we had been rehearsing all week. So that's what's up with the jumpsuit. I had an emergency zipper right before this had happened too. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, yeah, this was super high pressure. And obviously it was one of the most memorable moments. I mean, I've had a handful of live TV jobs where my heart was beating out of my chest. This was most certainly one of them. And the shot, you know, started up on the steps of Lincoln Memorial. So I had to Don Juan downstairs and it was live, and I knew that it was going to be some 30 million people watching live. So it's indescribable. The adrenaline that runs through your body at that moment is, it's just, I do miss that because it's a high that's like nothing else. But I mean, you know, I knew it was a historic moment. And the story behind that picture, just briefly, Dave Levison, who just received his SOC Lifetime Achievement Award this past year for his operating in live television, he has, you know, he had a still camera with him. And I told him before the show went on, I said, Dave, I know you've got a lot going on at this moment, but you have one job to do, and that is to get a picture of me with the president. I don't care if you've got a red light. I don't know how he pulled it off, because he was like center camera up on these, you know, up on the bleachers up high. You know, he obviously had an assignment to do, and he got that picture for me. So Dave Levison, God bless you for that. But yeah, I mean, there's a handful. I've done a couple like Super Bowl halftime shows right after 9/11. I brought Bono out. That was a moment where I felt like the world was watching. Couple of Olympic ceremonies that also are these moments in kind of history where you're like, holy cow, you know, you got to pinch yourself. This is happening. And just to tie in technical things that happen with this stuff, I had a focus puller who's my dear friend I mentioned before, Kevin Murphy, who did all my live TV work. And we kind of had a system where, you know, he would get to a point, you know, if I'm zooming and I'm moving, he very rarely used a monitor, Bobby, my friend Kevin. Mm-hmm. And what he would do, he pre-measured the stage, so he knew what distances were. And if there's a pattern, he knew that was a 5-foot pattern on the stage. So he had, you know, a fairly good calculation. But he also knew that as I was zooming in or coming around and going into a close-up, that it would get to a point where he would just stop trying to pull it, so we wouldn't have to fight it with each other. And mm-hmm. I would just make the correction on my end. So he'd get to a point where he felt it was sharp and he would stop. And if I saw it soft, I would just adjust my shot ever so slightly to help him. So that's how we used to work in the live TV world, which was kind of a very interesting dynamic. And then every so often I would, you know, if I needed something, I'd give him a point one way or the other if he was either deep or shallow. But we kind of had this nonverbal thing, this shorthand that worked for us for many years. But boy, that Obama thing was, and you look back at that now, and it sort of makes me sad without getting political. It was a very special moment in history for us.
I see that your jumpsuit had a nice hole in it for the arm to reach out.
Yeah, exactly. We had set that up in advance. So it was multifunctional. It was a blending camouflage suit and a warm outfit. I still have that jumpsuit, by the way.
Good. Keep it forever.
I'll be selling it on eBay because I'm unemployed now. So I'm looking for any, I don't know, any offers out there. I'll let it go pretty cheap.
Nice. You get best of both worlds. Jeff and Obama smell on the same jumpsuit.
It's only been worn that day. I've never put it on again.
We already have our first bid in the chat.
Yeah, $200.
It's going to have to be a lot more than that. I mean, there's no work. I don't know if you guys know this, but we're shut down. Yeah, but wow, Jess, wow. I mean, live, that was the most incredible live TV moment.
Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing the picture. I did probably about 3, maybe 4 years ago, I did my last live TV shot, and it was just a thing for SNL. Don Roy King, who directs that show, actually gave me my first broadcast Steadicam break. So we've been friends over the years, and I got a call from SNL, said we want to do a Steadicam live shot for our opener, and they'd never done it before, never done a Steadicam shot. Maybe it's 6 years ago. I may be dating myself, but in any event, I was terrified. I couldn't handle the live thing anymore. Maybe it's my age. I don't know what it was. But when the little red light came on, I was freaking out. It was a little intense. I've been so out of that game for so many years that, the live thing is, I think I'm kind of done with that.
Were your shots smooth?
Yeah, it worked fine. It worked fine.
All the time.
I mean, I think I was cabled. You know, the other thing about back then is we were on cable. You know, I think the Obama was probably fiber. But prior to that, we used to use Triax, and I had kind of developed a little system with a skinny little jumper cable in between the camera and my back. But the dance we had to do was obviously much more difficult. And
you had to retrace your steps, right? When you're cabled, you can't just go anywhere. You have to actually backtrack in order to start a new path.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I did a Michael Jackson show actually, it was the night before 9/11. 2001, 9/10 at Madison Square Garden, and it was the Jackson 5 25th anniversary special. And we had been rehearsing all week, and there's a not quite a oneer, but there's a performance with Michael where we practiced for almost half a day prior, and he actually offered to dance over the cable. So there was a couple of 360s within the dance number. And Michael, as sweet as he was back then, before we know what we know now, but he was just, I'll just dance over the cable. This week we had to figure out how to do a 360, and then so rather than uncoil, we 360'd. Actually, I think we did 2 circles, and then he just danced right over the cable, and my utility pulled the cable right off the stage so you have to kind of deal with all that stuff being hardline. Nowadays with the technology, most guys are wireless. I would assume very few live shows have a line now. Anyway, a little anecdote.
No, it's great. Great to
I
learn.
love the Steadicam. That's the quote. I love the Steadicam.
That's perfect. That you've been doing that. That's a very well rehearsed voice.
I wish you would have said that to me.
So
it's
Bobby,
a pretty cool show.
That's great, and a special moment in time too. Is obviously very memorable. Bobby, I'm curious. Your credits are very diverse. Do you have a favorite genre to work in? You've done, features and television. I have this highlight reel that I'm going to show that showcases most of your features. It feels like you've done so much in the amount of time that you've been working. Please, tell us if there's, some memorable moments, if and when you see them.
Well, I got to say, The Greatest Showman was a really fun job to work on. I like doing musicals. I did The Greatest Showman. I also did The Producers, and they're fun. There's a lot of spontaneity with the dancers. I definitely prefer movies over TV, just because they were much more controlled and they weren't as crazy, and the hours back then weren't as crazy as TV shows. But now, a lot more stuff is going to Netflix and everything is all TV, and so it's changing. It's changing. But like you said, most of my career was in the movies. I was just lucky that way, that's the way it went, I did Law and Order SVU for a couple of years. And the only other really TV show I did was, I think, Manifest and Mr. Robot. So, most of it has been movies, and that's basically what I prefer.
I think amongst your credits is actually The Shawshank Redemption. You're listed as a second. I'd love to hear anything about having been a part of that production.
No, actually, that's wrong. Eric Swanek was the first assistant on that, and Andy Harris was the second. They did 98% of the movie. They had to leave early, so I went in as a second with this guy Robin Brown, and we just did for 2 weeks. And for some reason, I got this big credit on Shawshank Redemption, which, like I said, that was basically Eric Swanwick. He did such a great job on that show.
It's obviously a very memorable movie.
Oh yeah,
to one and all.
But that shows that, you know, people fill in for people. Everybody's got each other's back, you know. Those few days, you know, you're able to keep the integrity of the look, the shot, the department. So
yeah. I think I did 2 weeks on it. That was it. The rest was all Eric and Andy. And like I said, they're both great. They did a great job as usual, you know.
The idea that you're putting out as well, that, oh, I only did 2 weeks. Contemporarily, there are movies that are shot in 2 weeks all the time. And so the fact that that such a, you know, that movie was so much bigger than that 2 weeks that you were there, shows how much the industry has changed, you know, from then to now.
Yeah, absolutely. Back then, every movie was at least 12 weeks. There was never an 8-week movie or a 6-week movie, unless it was a super low budget. Everything was at least 12 weeks. So you had and most of them were one camera shows. You know, a lot of them, when they would bring in Steadicam when they needed it, they'd bring in a second camera when they needed it. So things were much more planned. So it was a big difference. You know, you weren't forced into cramming everything into 8 weeks when it should really be like a 10 or a 12-week movie. And I think that's a big change in the industry today, you know.
Planning.
And more with less. You know, they're
Yes.
expecting higher results out of less time and less money, and
absolutely,
that's a challenge I think all of us are facing. And even the idea of you guys being on Mr. Robot and that being a television show that's kind of run like a movie, you know, and it's a lot has changed over time.
Absolutely.
Chris, do you have another one from the audience for us?
Yes, so I have one from Michael Derario. This is a comment and a question. So he says, Bobby and Jeff are an amazing team that have a special connection when working together. I've been fortunate enough to see it from the front row. So this is a two-part question. Number one, comments and tips for the importance of trust and communication between the operator and the first AC. And number two, Bobby is always right next to Jeff's sides when operating. Why is it so important to Jeff as an operator? And why is it so important to Bobby as the first?
Well, first off, Mike was my second on Mr. Robot and a couple of other shows. So,
He's a
so we know Mike very well.
He planted a good question for us, so we'd love to hear the answer.
Thank you, Mike.
Michael Derario, you know, Bobby and I, we both love you. And anyway, I'll just start, Bobby, just because
go ahead. Yeah.
It's so important for me to have you next to me. I mean, it's very challenging, and there are a lot of camera assistants that will do this. That'll be in another room. There are camera assistants that you never see on set. They're strictly monitor guys. And it's not to say that that's not going to get the job done, but to have your assistant work with you and have trust and a friendship is everything to me. There he is. Look at him, the master. I mean, he's never out of reach for me. I always know where Bobby is. I never have to wonder where Bobby is. And
sometimes, you know, most of the time you're stepping over me, Jeff.
I love that Jeff's in the reflection of the mirror too. You can see you're really close together.
I'll probably get in trouble for taking that picture. Yeah, it's Bobby's one of my favorite subjects to photograph. Look at him, very handsome man.
Bobby's in his zone.
It's just super important to have a relationship with your first, because again, we've talked about this earlier. The collaboration is so important, and the
Absolutely.
idea sharing and the comfort level. I mean, you know, I know that I can look over at Bobby and he can look at me, and you know, if I really screwed something up, I mean, you know, we'll pick each other up, and it's that part of the relationship is super, super important, and it's it also makes it fun. I mean, you know, it's a business that should be fun. And if it's not fun, then I feel like I'm in the wrong business. So it's, you know, that's a big part of having Bobby. And then of course we can talk about the potato game when Bobby's close with me. You can pick it up from here. You can pick it up from here, Mr. Bobby.
Well, like I said, I always like being next to the camera. I prefer being able to see when the dolly moves. If the operator says to the dolly grip, hey, let's start 6 inches further back or 6 inches closer, you know, that's,
Which
as
happens a lot.
That's your responsibility to know where the camera is. So if you're in another room and they move the dolly 6 inches, it might be imperceptible to you and you won't even know it, you know, so, and that could blow a shot for you, you know, so I prefer to be there to see those changes happening. Even a boom, if Jeff will say, oh, boom me up a little bit or boom me down a little bit, you know, I like knowing where the camera is all the time. And if I'm not next to the camera, I feel you can't be that way. Like Jeff said, a lot of people pull focus from another room and they do it very well. You know, that's great. You know, I just can't work like that. That's just the way I am, just the way I work. I prefer to be on the set, be a part of the set. Like Jeff says, you know, we laugh a lot. We have a good time, you know, and that's a big part of it, you know.
Yeah,
So
there'll come a time where I'll say something or ask an actor to make a small adjustment to help
right.
with compositionally, and if Bobby was in the other room, he'd miss that, and if he was, you know, and I'm always looking over to Bobby if I'm making any adjustment, I want to check in with my friend here to make sure that he's got that note that we just adjusted something.
Right.
And 99.9% of the time he's seeing it happen, but obviously there are other tasks. Bobby's also running a department. So there might come a moment where Mr. Durario is coming in to ask him a question. Well, I've just adjusted an actor. So it's a teamwork thing. And Michael Durario is one of the greats. And this was a very special group. So thank you for that question, Michael.
Very much. Thank you. Gabe, do you have another one from the audience for us?
Yes, I do. So this is from Miguel Ramos. He said, there's a lot of experience in this meeting that have been seen in the heights and lows of this industry. How does this pandemic compare to previous hardships the industry has had? How do you see the industry moving forward from here?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
That's a big question, really. I wrote a few things down.
Oh, awesome.
I mean, this pandemic, I mean, for starters, I don't know how much of your audience knows that I'm a COVID survivor. I went through hell for, you know, I'm basically 9 weeks out from my first symptoms of COVID-19. I got very sick. I was in the hospital. So I have, you know, a very strong opinion on this stuff. Right now, I don't see a viable solution for how we get out of this problem and how we get back to work, short of, you know, a really workable vaccine. But we all know that that's in the future, and nobody really could say how far in the future. So the next thing is testing. I mean, what do we do? Do we test people every day they show up to work? You know, there's so many opinions on this. You know, you read all the paperwork that's coming through, and the union has been doing great work in organizing their own. The only thing I don't like about it is the name task force, but it's great to see that they're actually working for us to keep everybody safe. And it's just, until science catches up a little bit, I don't know how we get back to work. And it's a huge problem. I mean, we're all running out of money. That's a problem. I want to work. I want to hug people. I don't know. I mean, this goes back, and it's so important to me that the studios have never really been super great at keeping a crew healthy, for many reasons. Dirty sets, filthy environments that we work in, long hours, short turnaround, no sleep. I mean, it's an industry where, in general, the crew has come last as far as our health and well-being and our lives. And I really, truly hope that we're at a point right now where something can change. The silver lining of all this can change. And now that the studios kind of see they need us, because they're going to run out of stuff to watch, they need to keep a healthy crew. And I don't know, there's so many different answers to that, but I think a healthy crew is a crew that has a longer turnaround. It's a crew that has less hours on set and you know, a safer environment, less atmosphere, a ventilation system. You know, it's just about immune system, right? And keeping healthy. So right. I just truly hope, and I'm rambling because this is, I'm very passionate about this, and I always have been. I'm the first guy to bitch and moan on set that we've been blowing atmosphere now for 6 hours and we haven't ventilated the room. I can barely breathe. So, I mean, atmospheric smoke, that's got to go. There's just so many different things that have to change to keep us healthy. And it's just, I hope that they'll see that, the importance of that. And it's not going to come cheap. Then that's always been the problem. You know, it's the economics versus crew health.
Right.
You know?
I did a test shoot this week with a few friends, less than 10 people, just to see if we could get away with this social distancing thing. There's a small studio that let us in, and it was like this jail scene, one person, and they wanted haze. Of course, the DP wanted haze. And as the Steadicam operator, I couldn't breathe whatsoever. It didn't matter what kind of mask I was wearing. And this was all day.
You can't wear, it's very, very difficult to wear a mask and do Steadicam. And my contention has always been, you know, they're like, yeah, it's vapor. Vaping is not so good for you, as we've learned. And the other problem is as the Steadicam operator, you're utilizing much more of your lungs than anyone else on set for that moment. You're actually, you know, involved in a workout, essentially. So we're respirating at twice the speed of anybody else. So yeah, it might just be vapor, but I also feel like it's coating, it's blocking, it's doing all sorts of bad stuff to our lungs. I mean, there's a part of me, and this is so wrong to say, but there's a small part of me that blames some of that on my COVID-19. And that's just my own, you know, I have no science behind that other than the fact that I have been in such heavy atmosphere for so many years in a row that I really feel like it's compromised my lung capacity. And to the point where maybe that's how COVID slipped in and found a weakness. Don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, that's my feeling on haze. But that's just one subject of many, how we get back to a healthier set. I mean, you know, somebody's got to police this stuff, right? You know, there's talk of putting somebody that's not directly hired by production has to be that person. Even the set medic can't be that person. You know, it has to be somebody who doesn't have an interest economically to keep us safe. It really has to be someone outside, an outside source. And I don't know how that works. Like, who's going to hire him? If he's hired from the studio, then he's biased. If he's hired from the union, then he's biased on our side. So there has to be some kind of neutral person that decides, okay, time to ventilate the set. Okay, you go wash up, go home. You have a fever. We're done. We need, you know, the crew needs more rest. I mean, something like these things have to go into place. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
When all this went down, I noticed that security guards were almost regulating this. Like, building security. We're
Yeah.
checking all of us.
Yeah.
And I'm worried actually that this is going to almost fall in their hands, which I'm not saying anything other than I want someone that wants to be there all day that's looking after us. You know, I want someone that enjoys their job and is really alert and, you know, has organizational skills as well as health skills and all that stuff. Like, I'm hoping it's a combination of a security person, a medical person, a foreman. You know, it's like this person is control of all of our safety. I'm hoping it's the right people.
I think an important thing too is that the studios have to realize that they have to build in the time. If it's testing every day, you know, that everybody has to be tested before they go on the set, this time has to be built into their scheduling. If it's cleaning of equipment, this time has to be built in. It can't be, okay, guys, we're in at 8 o'clock, boom, let's go, we're gonna shoot. But wait a minute, we didn't even unload our truck, we didn't, you know, it can't go on like that. If they're gonna put some measures, everybody has to abide by them, and these things have to be, that time has to be built into the schedule.
Yeah, it's the age-old problem of the economics versus the health of the crew. It's really, but now more than ever, it's a reality, because, you know, now we're talking about, you know, lives, and of course it all boils down to, you know, SAG and the cast being comfortable and
how that's going to all work out. Looks like my earpiece just died.
I think mine are gonna die.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
To take on that, Jeff, I know you guys are in the big union shows, but what do you think might happen with the low budget, no budget world? Like, I don't really have a thought other than I know the other day getting lunch was the most dangerous part of the day.
I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. You could wear all the PPE you want. It's when you're in a tight space with people, you know, it's a risk. You know, you're playing Russian roulette. So I don't know. I don't really understand what the solution is. I wish I had an answer, because it's a mess. It's a big mess. And it really, I think it boils down to testing. I mean, right, it's short term, right? It's got to be a reliable test, and it's got to be something that has to be simple and fast. I mean, you can't go doing a nose swab and wait 24 hours and then come in the next day. And it's just, there has to, you know, we've got to get some kind of reliable, fast test to get us back to speed. And I think, but that's in every business, right?
Yeah. Quarantining a crew together sound smart? Sound like maybe we're not there yet? What do you think?
For me, it's not for me. I think I'd probably pass. I don't think I'd want to stay locked up somewhere. I mean, and what does that mean? Does that, when quarantining a crew, does that mean they're going to feed us, and where's that food coming from, and who's cleaning? How do we do laundry without going? I mean, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm not sure how that works. You know, and not to mention, you know, I don't want to be that away from my family that long. I mean, we've all done it. We've all done jobs. I try to avoid doing jobs that are that long away, because I want to see my family. So I'm not sure. I wish I had better answers for this problem, because it is a problem, and but I do believe it's a short-term problem. I think in the long term, we're going to get back to things, and I just hope the silver lining is that people, you know, care about each other a little bit more than they do currently. And, you know, I mean, it's always bothered me that an actor gets 12-hour turnaround and we only got 10. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they need the same rest that we need. In many ways, we're working harder and more physical. What's that all about? You know, humans need sleep. There's science that says it. So these are all issues that I've been fighting about for years, but now it's becoming a thing that is super important, because this thing, you know, it is about immune system, but we need to learn more about it. I mean, I'm still figuring this thing out. I'm not 100% yet, and it's like I said earlier, I've been recovering. I've been sick for 9 weeks, with a really bad period for 2 weeks. So I've been recovering. This is now, I think, my 6th week from being in the hospital. And I'm out of breath if I try to run down the block. So
how are you feeling right now?
What's that?
How are you feeling now?
I feel pretty good, actually. I'm anxious to start exercising, but I'm waiting on a few other things with the lungs to make sure that I can move forward. It's just with pneumonia, and everybody's told me it's a slow recovery. So I'm just knock on wood. I'm actually feeling pretty darn good, though.
Are you feeling better?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this during all this. I mean, I feel like in our community, especially Steadicam community, this is part of the reason why we wanted to put this Q&A together. You're the best person to talk to right now for this, for all of us. We don't know much other than we need to hear it from someone that's like us, and that happens to be you. And we're so glad you're okay, and we're thankful for you sharing the story. And I'll tell you, I was questioning whether or not it was real, and it became really real to me when I saw your video, because it was someone I knew, someone I cared about, like it made me really wake up. And it sucks that it came at a delay, because a lot of people don't know what to do or don't know what to believe or whatever. So I'm hoping whatever we're doing right now, talking to you, resonates to everyone that's on this panel. Like this is really something serious.
Well, it's real, and I thank you for saying that. It's I'm not going to get emotional. I promise myself, because it's still, there's a lot of scars. This was a thing, and when I posted that video of me being sick, I didn't do it to scare people. Although I sort of did, but I do understand that it's rare. I mean, as far as I know, I'm the only Steadicam guy with COVID-19. How does that happen? So it's rare, right? So I can understand the complacency with people wanting to get back to work. Oh, it's not going to happen to me, and more than likely it won't. That's the honest answer. But at the same time, is that the gamble that's worth taking? And obviously, we've all heard about completely healthy young people, really having a battle with this thing and not surviving it. So it's a scary, it's a crazy discussion even to have, right? What is it worth it? Of course not. But at the same time, there are risks in life, right? I mean, I used to ski a lot more when I was younger. That's an assumed risk, right? I could break a bone and be out of work, something worse. There are people that skydive. So there is assumed risk with everything in life, I guess is what I'm getting at. And the question becomes, and this is the dialogue that everybody's having, is getting back to work sooner than later, is that the assumed risk we're all prepared to take? For me, I wouldn't want anyone I know going through what I went through, having to, struggle to find a breath for many days in a row. Each and every breath was a battle. So I wouldn't wish it on anybody. So it's just a cautious tale is what we're talking about. And I just wish I wish there was a simple fix. And people are going to go out and they're going to take chances and they're going to do this. And granted, everybody's got masks, and it's going to be, people are certainly more aware about washing their hands and all this, which is all important stuff. So the hope is, we've got the curve down, the medical industry, the hospitals won't be overrun. But I don't know. I'm just a guy that's just trying to get back to work and feel better. So it's a tough conversation, but it's a good one to have.
Thank you so much. It's pretty rough, but we're grateful to have you a part of the community. The industry definitely needs, it should always have people like you, humble,
It's very sweet of
hardworking.
you to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got a little emotional. I'm trying to catch my breath.
It's been a thing for me, but it's a very humbling experience. When you see kind of death nearby is kind of a freaky thing. So but again, I am aware of the rarity of it. So I think it's important for people to, understand the flip side too. And I get it. I totally understand that there are people that would rather, take the gamble and go on with things. So, I mean, I won't fault anybody for that. But, I mean, I'd like to feel that I'm somewhat protected at least, but the science can't tell me that yet either. So I'm just in it with everybody else. I've been told that I have to, take the same precautions as someone who never had it. So it's, I don't know. I don't know, Bobby. What do you think?
I don't know, but believe me, I was scared when I spoke to you on the phone, and even the text, I could tell the pain and that you were going through. You weren't yourself, and it scared me. It scared me. And when I saw the videos, I found it a little upsetting to see you like that, to see what you were going through. You're my friend, and like you said, we've been through a lot together, and it was painful to watch at times, just watching you gasp for air, and those are things that, like you said, people have to realize that it can happen. It can happen. And like you said, maybe 90% of the people that get it, it won't happen to. But, do you want to be that 10% that it does happen to when,
Well, that 1% or whatever the percentage
right,
is.
right.
Yeah, it's a tough call. And
But-
I would assume that everybody takes the precautions that the percentage will drop. It'll be even less than that.
Yes, but if there are precautions that are going to have to be taken, but they have to be taken by everybody, and everybody has to
Right.
take those precautions seriously. It's not something that, some hotshot could walk in and say, "Well, I don't want to wear a mask," or "I don't want to do this," or "I don't want to do that." It's something that, like they say, I'm wearing a mask to protect you. You're wearing a mask to protect me.
Right.
It's something that we all have to do it together.
Yeah. What's interesting in the hospital is everybody wears 2 masks. All right.
Mhm.
So they wear, the ever so popular N95, which has a vent that goes outward, but then they had a softer mask over that. So it was a product of protecting themselves and protecting you. So it was an interesting thing. If you see basically any medical worker right now, they're wearing 2 masks for that reason. So one to protect coming out, one to protect coming in. It doesn't seem to be one mask that does both. So I found that interesting. But also, I want to mention that when we do come back, and we will be coming back, I mean, I don't think this is a forever thing, that it's going to be awfully cutthroat out there. And I just hope as a community, we're all going to, continue to do the right thing by each other, and not, there's going to be lowballing, and there's going to be all this crazy negotiation. And I suspect the studios are going to, cry poverty. But as far as I'm concerned, they haven't been spending money, so they probably have plenty to spend when we come back. So don't cut yourself short, is all I'm trying to say.
That's great. This has been an amazing conversation. I appreciate your courage and your strength in sharing your story. It is enlightening for all of us to hear firsthand an account of what's going on in the world. It can be difficult because we're all in our own little bubbles. But when we share with each other, that we are experiencing similar things, it can really help.
And I think this is the chance it's almost like a reset button for the world. I think it's a chance for all of us to take a new leaf, to try and do better with our lives, with people, with relationships. I know that I've tried to make a few amends during this COVID. I've tried to start something new in my life. I think that that's what we all need, right?
Well, what you've done with this is amazing. You know, this is definitely a pay it forward thing, and it's kind of awesome. So you guys really should be proud that you've pulled this thing together. This is amazing. I'm looking at all your faces, and it's really, really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Our guests are usually what makes it great, and our attendees as well. You know, the questions that we get from them and the opportunity to have, you know, shared experiences. That's what makes this so awesome.
Yeah, well, it's a thrill for me. I mean, a lot of fun. You guys have anything else that we missed?
We could.
I don't want to bring. I don't want to be the buzzkill. I don't want to be the buzzkill COVID-19 poster boy here.
I think we could do probably one more round of questions. Do we have time?
Whatever you guys want.
I think we have a little bit of time if people are willing to stick through a little after 2 hours. Taylor, do you maybe have something lined up?
I do. I have a few questions posed for Jeff. I was thinking, I was wondering, what are the challenges of a one-er shot compared to traditional coverage, and how do you approach them differently?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I'll speak of Steadicam one-ers because it's although there's similarities, I approach them differently. The first and foremost is you got to be involved in the rehearsal while everything's being blocked out, because you have to have the foresight to see if something's about to happen in this blocking, that it's going to either be impossible, or just maybe you can just slide the actors or the furniture. So it's important to be involved in rehearsals, because that's the time where you really want to make, if there's a major change that you need. And that's just a dialogue that you have to have with the director as it's happening. I mean, you know, when you go into these long one-ers, it's sort of assumed that it's going to be a collaborative thing. You can't just, you know, the director has a vision, and it's usually close to perfect, but there has to be some fudging. And also, you know, again, you have to adjust the furniture. If you see he wants you to make a circle around this part, or maybe you can offer, let me just go to the other direction. It might work a little bit better in terms of getting me in a position that'll continue the shot. So that during rehearsals is where I like to offer up things. Once we have gotten it nailed down, oh, this is worth talking about. So this is a perfect example, because the original shot concept was not a one-er. There was going to be a cut here where we're just going to flip 180 degrees. And I pitched this, that we should try it in front, and I did it in front of everybody. And the actors were all in. Christian Slater, it's amazing that he pulled this off. I mean, the idea being, a lot of people might not watch the show, but I know, Taylor, you understand this, that Christian Slater's character doesn't really exist. So the fact that he magically appears in the other subway is kind of amazing. So this is a situation where I had to do a lot of the cueing. I had to let him know when he was in frame, when he was out of frame, and we discovered I had to do a little dip to hide him. We also knew that as a backup plan, we could paint in the doors closing on the other subway train just to get through it. But this is an example of a collaborative one-er that I really, just the fun of it, had to go for. Here's where I dipped down just a little lower just to hide him coming through the door. You actually saw the door closing just ever fractionally in that shot, now that I'm looking at it. I don't know how Bobby even did this, but and in a longer one-er, just to sum up, part of my process is once we've blocked and rehearsed it, and often I'll offer to shoot a rehearsal, by the way, just because I figure I'm going to do it multiple times anyway. I might as well just put it down on tape. Maybe I'll get lucky. But I will close my eyes before we roll and just physically and mentally go through each and every move of the entire shot, just so I have it in memory. And it's just a thing that I've kind of learned to do, because when I first started, I did indies where we did these long takes. So I will literally go through each and every switch and where my body needs to be for every part of the move, so that when we get into it, it's just kind of I have a mental picture that I just go back to. And that's sort of how I process a long take. I know other operators put an HME, a headset on, and have cues told to them. I like to just take it to memory, and I have a pretty visual memory. So that's why when I prep right before the shot, I just do a visual recap of the entire move, so I have it clear in my head. And that's sort of how I do that kind of stuff. But that subway shot was a fun one. That was
great.
Got a lot of buzz
later.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think Michael Durario might have shot that behind the scenes footage.
I think he did.
Great. I had one more question. I was curious, what is one of the most challenging camera setups that you've, kind of accomplished or worked with? And I think
I can make that quick.
A rig too.
I can just a quick answer to that is years ago I did it was like a support video for a fire department, and I built a infrared camera in high mode and a video camera, like I think it was Betacam at the time, in low mode. So I did a handle mount. It was just a totally mucked up rig, but 2 full cameras. So, and I had to actually see the shot. I patched in the infrared camera because they smoked up a home, and I wore a respirator, ironically. And that was like one of these crazy camera setups. 2 cameras. My viewing system was the infrared camera, and I was recording a low mode real camera. So they were able to use both cameras for this demo for firemen, how to get around in a home that's filled with smoke.
Wow.
I think that was probably the kookiest rig. Bobby's probably had weirder ones.
No, I always say they're all difficult. Some are just more difficult than others. It's. I will say, Mr. Robot was a very challenging show for me. All the crane work and things we did, and like I said, everything either started at minimum focus or ended at minimum focus. And we were on cranes all the time, in the studio on a crane in his apartment in one room. Following him all around and ending up 6 inches away from his face, So, but then again, there were shots like on The Greatest Showman that were just so much fun to do. And, they're difficult, but they're fun,
This is a great rig. This is Bobby, what was the Descender company that set this up? I would love to give them a pitch. God, I don't have it off. Lance is going to kill me. But anyway,
this was actually
for
the Mini Libra.
For me, this was a very simple shot. All I'm doing is twisting. But the guys that rigged it for a day in advance. Look at Lance is texting me. Flycam. It's the Flycam guys. So yeah, this was very easy for me. I think we only did 1 take of these actually, because I think Brahmi's knee was bothering him. So we had second team do a rehearsal for us, and then we stuck these guys in and we just went for it. And all I did was twist. I mean, it was actually one of the easier shots I've ever done on that show. But the setup was tricky because it took prep, and the guys they had like an inch diameter to spare. So that's where Bobby and his team had to really build a really small camera body. I mean, no mat box, no nothing, just small motors.
Yeah, we were on
the hard setup.
The Mini Libra for that, and Lance Mayer, our Libra head tech, really he figured out the way to mount the camera on and get everything on that we needed. So
I did put the Mini Libra on my Steadicam arm on a bus once.
Yes.
And I swore I'd never repeat that, but we were it was one of these situations where we had, how do we do this shot? And Steadicam wouldn't fit, and it needed to be a traveling bus down the aisle of the bus that then panned to see Rami sitting there against a window. So it was just one of these dumb ideas. So I was like, well, I think I could probably wear the Mini Libra and have someone else operate the wheels. I won't be doing that again anytime soon. But that was one of the wackier setups.
That's
use
great.
the Gore
Thank you
link.
for your answers.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, Danielle, do you have one more for us, perchance?
Yeah, and I think it kind of follows up to when you have a challenging shot for Bobby. What kind of support do you expect from your second AC?
Mm.
I weigh very heavily on my second ACs. I like them to do all the adjustments of the camera as far as like any speed adjustments or ASA, you know. I like to have my seconds really involved, you know. So I've been lucky. I've had great second assistants my whole career. You know, Mike Durario was one of them. And I rely on them very heavily for, you know, getting equipment, getting crews, you know, things that are a lot of things that are behind the scenes. I like my seconds to do the Zooms if we have to do a Zoom. I feel it gets them more involved in the show. And I think that's important, you know. So, yeah, I'm very dependent on my seconds.
Yeah. I mean, on a TV show, the second really runs the department.
Yeah.
Fair to
And
say, Bobby?
Yes, they would always come to, and look, I'd say, you know, I trust you guys, you know, to make a decision. I said, if you run into a problem, then come to me, you know. I've always had seconds that I could trust. And like I said, I rely on them to hire crews, to equipment, you know, they always check with me what crews, what equipment you think we need. But they're really the ones that are executing the communication with the rental house, communication with production, communication with transportation. Yeah, so that's a big part for me, for them. You know, I rely on them for that. And like I said, a lot of times just with making adjustments on the camera itself, you know. A lot of times because I don't know how to do it. So I would say, hey, Mike, come in here.
That's awesome. That's really cool that you rely on them and you trust them that much.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. You're only as good as the people you have working with you.
Absolutely, yeah. Got to keep things moving.
That's it.
Very true.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
So
Amazing.
let's do one
yeah.
or two more from the audience, and then we'll wrap it
Also,
up here.
will I be able to see all the comments from the chat stuff at a later point, or do they go
Yeah,
away?
actually,
Oh, good,
we
because
can.
I haven't had a chance to read them because we've been kind of wrapped up in this stuff. So I'd love to read all these chats at some point.
We could definitely send them to you because they are saved. And
awesome.
Let's do a question from the audience. Chris, can you throw one our way?
Perfect. So I actually have two very short questions from Merlin Showwater and Imogen Hughes. With so much technology on set these days, how much time do you spend learning new gear versus focusing on working on the more artistic skills? And also from Imogen, how do you stay creative or practice your skill during lockdown?
Wow.
Yeah.
Drinking
heavily. No.
Yeah, I wish. Try quarantining sober. Not fun. Wow. Well, the first question about the new gear. I mean, it's all great stuff going on, right? I mean, I'm kind of an old dog, so new tricks are a little tough. But I embrace all new gear. I mean, I love the gimbal rigs. It's just what I'm finding is the time to say when it's not good to use. You know, when Movi first came out, you know, everybody was, wow, Movi, it's the answer to everything, and it's going to knock out Steadicam. But then I soon found out, and I was lucky enough to kind of be in the beginning of its process. In fact, we used the first prototype on the vinyl pilot of Movi. So I had my hands on the very first Movi that was kind of ready for prime time. But in any event, the point I'm trying to make is that new gear is great and it has a place just like every other piece of equipment. But the most important thing is to say, no, that's not the right gear for this shot. And that's a big mistake that's going on with the new equipment. I mean, there's limitations to every piece of equipment. I mean, we had a shot very early on Robot, actually, where I pitched it as a Movi shot, because it needed to go over a counter and then low, and there was really no other device. It was in a home, practical location. There was really no other way to do the shot. But then the shot changed, and it became very different. It became a 360 around a low table, and then backing out through doors. And after we did several takes of it, and Rich Guinness, who's the key grip, he held the Movi and I steered it with the remote wheels. We realized, I mean, I got to a place where it just wasn't working. And Sam, I said, who was sitting right next to me with his big monitor, I said, you know, I can do this in Steadicam. Now that the shot has changed, it's the wrong tool. So we took the half an hour to break down the Movi and build Steadicam, and I was able to execute the shot. So the new equipment is amazing. You have to keep up with it, but you have to know when to say no. I think that's more important than when to say yes in many levels, because you really can get yourself into a bind bringing in something that's maybe not right for that shot. So there's a lot of equipment coming out. At the end of the day, it's whatever is best for the shot and storytelling in that particular project. And what was part 2 of that?
Oh, about artistic, like sharpening.
The part 2 was versus focusing on working on more artistic skills.
Focusing on work. I'm not sure I understand the question.
It's like
more
how
artistic skills?
How much do you feel you need to continue to pursue technical knowledge versus having a greater understanding of framing?
I think it's equally as important. I think you have to understand what the tools are, just as important as understanding your framing. And then as far as, I know you also asked just about sharpening my skills during this period. It's like riding a bike. I'm not overly concerned. I am anxious to throw the rig on, I have found in past, this is the longest I've ever gone in the 30 years of doing Steadicam without wearing it, by a long shot, actually. So it's going to be a little weird. I don't know if the vest is going to fit, what have you, but it may be loose, Bobby. It may actually be loose.
I think it might.
But in any event, I believe it's like riding a bike. I do know that when I get on a set, when I've been even at a Steadicam for 2 weeks or a month, which is about as long as I've ever gone, I'm rusty. And I'm rusty maybe for an hour, maybe it's a couple of hours, but there's definitely a little rust that you have to kick out. It's like anything. I mean, I play golf, and I use that as an analogy. You know, if you stop playing golf for a long period of time, you're going to stink first time out, or maybe you'll, have a couple of moments of greatness. But in general, it's like anything athletic or with coordination. You need some practice, and you get a little rusty. So, I mean, there's nothing I'm really doing now other than I will say this: when I'm walking my mile and a half, there's a section of the walk that's slightly uphill. I'll walk backwards up that section just to try to strengthen, because I joke about it, but we walk, as Jess will tell you, we walk backwards for a living. I got to start getting back to that strength. So that's about all I'm really doing right now. But it's riding a bike. I'm not really overly worried. I'm sure I'll be a little rusty. Somebody's going to have to deal with me the first day back. Hopefully it'll be a friend.
That's great. Thank you. I'm seeing, you know what?
We must be boring them to death by now.
No, we still have over 150 people here hanging out.
Goodness. Thank you all. My good.
Wow.
So, Jeff, do you have a tip for everyone as an operator about working with actors?
Yeah. It's just be yourself. They're just people, for the most part. There are obviously, and there are times when, a more method actor, you have to keep your distance. But my experience is I like to be friendly with actors, and I like to get to know them, and I like to earn their trust as fast as I possibly can. And I'll I will typically have a conversation with an actor before we start a production even, and I'll tell them, listen, I'll be sitting in front of you for this whole run. I'm here for you. If there's anything that I can do to make your job easier, please don't hesitate to ask, whatever it is. So, I mean, it's important to me, the actor-operator relationship is super, super important, because it becomes a dance, and it's a collaboration, and it's the best part of it, really, is to become. And I still have friends on just about every show I've ever worked with that I still communicate with to this day, and it's important for me to have that relationship, that trust, because then the actor's job becomes easier, right? If they trust the person behind the camera, they can perform better. They don't have to worry that. So as far as a single tip, it's hard to put into one word or two words, but it's just be friendly and earn their trust is really what I think is probably the most important thing for an actor.
That's great.
I know what I've seen a lot of times with experienced operators, they just go up and introduce themselves to the actor. Like Jeff will
first and foremost
say, hey, I'm Jeff, I'm the camera operator, like he says, I'll be in front of you for this whole show. And I think that's important. I think that kind of breaks the ice, and
for sure.
We'll see, then the operator will refer to you by your first name instead of, hey, you operator, or something like that. So I think what Jeff says is very important. Just go up and introduce yourself,
I'll do that as a day player.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. As an actor, I agree that the communication is very important. Send your actors to a camera workshop so they can understand lenses and camera movement. That would be good.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. It's funny, a lot of actors do say, what lens do you have on there? Like they want to.
Some are more, some are certainly more mechanically inclined and understand the process. Actually, it seems like a lot of the younger ones nowadays, because of the availability of equipment and video, understand the filmmaking process of the equipment and the lensing a little bit better. I'm finding, a lot of guys are filmmakers. A lot of guys coming up actor-wise are good filmmakers on their own right. So it's kind of cool to work with people that understand what you're doing.
Right.
But I like to protect the actor. It's super. I did it. There was a moment on Smash, I'll never forget it, with Deborah Messing, and the director, who will remain nameless, wanted to do a turnaround without relighting. They were running out of time on the day, and we swung around to do a shot. We auditioned the shot, and the lighting was awful. And I just spoke up and I said, I'm not shooting Deborah like this. And I earned her respect that moment, and she thanked me later on that day, and we've been friends ever since. But it's the point of showing that you're out for their better interest. If you're looking out for an actor and they know that, it gives them such a feeling of confidence. So it's all about the same story, really. It's just let them know who you are, earn their respect and trust.
And that's what we're trying to do here with SteadiSchool. Chris, she's our stand-in and our actor when we do our workshops and our classes. Both Danielle and Taylor have operated and pulled focus for Chris in their frame. She's coming and learning the dialogue and the language so that she could actually be, more on it in frame. And so we try to welcome that whole relationship, because it's not just us, it's a team. And
it's a win-win for everybody.
It is.
Total win-win. Yeah, it's great. Very smart to do it that way.
All right,
I hope I can work with all of you at some point very soon.
So that would be our honor. One last one I'm going to start it with Bobby. How about some do's and don'ts? As the A camera first, you're the de facto key of the department. It's kind of an unofficial position, but you're the main communicator. How do you manage the relationship with the first AD, especially when things are running behind?
That's a tough one. As a first AC, like you said, if the first AD's job is to always push. You know, most of them are the schedule, you know, time, oh, we're behind and everything. But as a first AC, if you need a mark or something, you have to speak up, you know. And the thing is, if they don't give you the time, you know, it's going to take another take to do it. Maybe you could get it in one take, and you know,
invest the time.
You don't have enough time to do it right, but do you have enough time to do it twice? You know, so let's do it right the first time, and that's what I try to stress. You know, a lot of times they'll say, "Well, can we shoot the rehearsal?" And I'll say, "Okay, yeah, you want to give it a shot? Let's give it a shot." But you know, don't turn around to me and then say, "Well, why do we have to go again now?" You know, don't. But you have to be able to, as a first assistant, there are times where you have to speak up and say, "No, I need a mark," or "I just need to see a rehearsal real quick to see where they're going," you know. And again, those are certain times you have to pick out. You can't do that all the time, because if you do, people won't believe you when you really need it. You know, so there are times where you have to speak up, but you have to know, you have to learn when. You know, that's the important thing. You have to learn when to.
Back.
You know, it goes, so that comes with experience.
Yeah, that goes back to knowing the room.
Right, exactly.
Is that give you the confidence to speak up? Because I noticed that even in my journey, it's hard to have the confidence sometimes to speak up. You're afraid.
Right. But, you know, you got to make them understand this is your job. You know, this is what you're doing and you want to do it right. You know, and you don't want to have to make them do it again. You know, you don't want to have to make them do a crying scene again if they don't have to, you know. But you may need a mark, you know, like I would say, could I just see where your position where you're going to go and run a tape out real quick, you know, because an emotional scene, you don't want to have to make them do it again. You know, you want to try to get it in that one shot. But sometimes getting a mark or two will save you time in the long run, you know?
It's a balancing act as far as when to speak up and when to not, as we've talked about. It's definitely knowing the room and then balancing. Is this the moment where I really need to ask for this? And, you know, but that comes with experience. And you know when you need it. And I like to use the phrase, I promise you this will be a good investment in time. That's what they like to hear. You know, let's spend the time now, we'll save the time later.
Right, exactly.
And you have to deliver the goods though as well. Otherwise you're not going to get that opportunity again.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much. And thank you to our attendees, you know, our guests, the panel. I've personally been enjoying this so very much, and I'm excited that everyone is a part of this. Next week, we're hosting Janice Arthur and Alana Gerard, ACO, for a Women in Steadicam panel. Please join us. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube page if you want to watch this or any prior sessions. They're available there. Please join us again next week. You know, we're having a great time, and you know, this was a really very encouraging and heartfelt session. And you know, thank you again to Jeff and Bobby for doing this. We really appreciate your time, and hope to, you know, encounter you guys in person again once the world returns to normal.
Well, thank you. I just want to thank you for putting it together. You guys did an incredible job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
I'd love to do this again, you know, without the group. We could just, you know, I hate to wait another whole week to see you guys. This has been awesome.
Thanks. Thank you, Jeff. That's a mighty compliment.
Learning
Yeah.
a lot.
Let's do this over drinks. It'd be great.
Yeah, we'll keep you in mind for our next SteadiSchool Zoom amongst our, you know,
please do. Put me on the list.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Jeff and Bobby. I appreciate you guys for taking the time to speak to the community and everybody from Learn Filmmaking and SteadiSchool. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate all the questions. We had over 100 questions. So, you know, next week we're going to have another event. So definitely join us.
All right. I'll try to dig through some on my time too. If you send me them, I'll try to respond to some of these.
Okay.
Awesome.
And
thanks, guys.
Keep taking care of yourself, Jeff. Thank you for sharing your story.
Awesome. Will
Thank
do,
you,
guys.
Jeff.
Be good. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you all.
Be safe.
Take
Bye,
care.
everybody. Take care,
Bye.
Bobby.
Bye-bye.
Stay
Thank
healthy,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, Mr. Jeff.